Hi, hello. I wish to all Floorball fans, followers, and enthusiasts a good day. I hope we can make it even a better day for you after hearing this interview. Welcome in a special episode of the Back Week Checking podcast. This time we could have called it Back Season Checking because in today's special we would like to focus on the recap of the regular season in Swedish Super League with a slight focus on the Czech players. And for that, we have invited a special guest who knows what's what in Swedish Super League. Our guest played the SSL himself, won it as a coach, was part of the staff of the Swedish national team, creates with his two other colleagues a weekly SSL recap called Innebandy Centralen, and now is quite busy with an expert commentary of the SSL playoffs. And as you can already see, our guest is Mika Monzon Pakalen. Hi, Mika. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me again. It's a huge honor. Thank you.
Mika, we had you here in December 2024 during the Men's World Championships in Malmö, Sweden. That suggests it's been a while. So another season is already almost over. So how are you? Having a good day today? Looking forward to the playoffs?
For sure, yeah. I mean, these are busy times, right? And these are fun times as well, because the kind of like the regular season is over, and as much fun as that is, it's not as fun as the playoffs. So now it's basically expert commentatorship every other night, which is a bit kind of like stressful, of course, because you have to handle everything else in your day-to-day life. But then again, it's a huge privilege, obviously, to be able to do this. And I've been doing this media, expert commentating for 10 years now. So I'm truly blessed that people still, regard me as a person that they want to choose to these assignments. So thanks for that, all the people that are looking at the games.
Our main focus today or the topics is quite clear, but before we jump into let's say the focus on the Czech players and the teams they play in, let's start with maybe a little bit bigger picture of our sport in general, and well, to be more specific, we can refer to one of your latest columns that you posted in your blog that you called, I just have it here, I hope I had the correct pronunciation of it, or a correct translation. Floorball's current impossible equation. Is it the right translation?
Yeah. Did you do it yourself, or was it Google translation?
Well, I'm not that great in Swedish and bara lite, but that's not what we are here for. My Swedish skills. Why I want to start with it is that in it, of course, you mainly focus on explanation of how the Swedish Super League games are being created and produced. Well, also one of the quotes there of you is that the elite floorball is a loss-making business in terms of rights. So that suggests, or the question from my side is, where are we with the elite floorball in general?
Well, I think we need to kind of like circle back to the first question, which is where are we as a sport in terms of I call floorball one of those kind of like marginal sports. We're behind quite many of the big ones. We don't need to name those, everybody knows. When it comes to these kind of like marginal sports, we are there. I would say in Sweden, at least, we're in pair with, let's say, basketball, maybe handball, speedway, which is somewhere there as well, the motorsport of speedway. and also then floorball. So in terms of that, we are not in the top of the supply chain by any means. And if you specifically look at floorball, I think in Sweden there's a misconception a bit, like we're bigger than, especially the people in the floorball community think that the floorball is bigger than it is. Because when you look at the number of players or the number of licenses and so forth, then this sport is really big. But when it comes to sports consumption, people who actually eyeballs that are watching, in terms of spectators at the arenas, but also when it comes to looking streams or TV, it doesn't add up. It's not equal with those. So in one way, you could say that maybe people like to play the sport more than to watch it, or that we've been also being kind of like spoiled that this sport, especially in Sweden, has been broadcasted on bigger media houses. So now when we have the economy that we have, financial times that we have, you can see this, that the big media houses are not as interested anymore, because they don't, the number of games you have to produce, the volumes doesn't sum up the production costs. And this is something that nearly all the big media houses have done their math and then done their kind of like financials around this, and they don't see the sport as attractive as most of us, being the fans or being the kind of like floorball community want to believe. So this is the kind of like the equation, and that is currently at least quite impossible, because if you start producing the number of games, especially from the elite leagues, and I'm talking about the Swedish Super League on women's side and on men's side, that is a whole bunch of games. And when you don't see people looking at the streams in those kind of like numbers, then it's a losing game basically for the companies or for the broadcasting companies. So this is hard facts. This is where we are. But still, I would like to say that all the games are, you can see them, right? Even though in some parts you need to have low production costs in terms of AI cameras and this and that. And I know for sure, that people get annoyed and pissed and irritated and frustrated and this and that. But in the end, at the end of the day, this is the world we live in. Somebody needs to, at least you need to have plus minus zero game at the end, which it isn't at the moment.
I get you in this regard. The article or the column that you wrote was more focused on already producing the SSL games. Maybe the reality in other countries may be different. We can discuss that anyway. However, your column was also cited in the Czech Floorball magazine, so there may be something to it. You also touched it a little bit, the financial reality, and now we're talking together about the elite floorball, and it's not been that long that in Swedish Super League, Team Torrengruppen was stripped away of its license or did not receive it. I don't know exactly. You can shed more light on it. In Czechia also, in the highest league, in two consecutive seasons, there's been two teams joining forces in the so-called projects. Because of one of the reasons were the financial burden on it, financial burden of the elite floorball. So maybe going back to Team Torrengruppen and Sweden, where are we in regarding the financial reality?
Yeah, well, tough times, I would say. I mean, harsh, tough times for many elite clubs, I would say. Most of them, I would say. And that's the reality. It's been really tough, the past couple of years for many teams. And if you look at Thorengruppen, for instance, what they chose was to degrade, their men's team. I think, they pulled the team off from the men's Super League and chose only to go with the women's team. For Falun, they did the same thing, but the other way around. They demolished their women's team, but only supporting the going with the men's team. And obviously, some of the teams also have the factor that they have two teams. They have the men's team and the women's team in the highest league. And when it comes to costs, traveling costs, and this and that, it's tricky. It's tricky to kind of like have get the budget in order, basically, and the books in order. So I think, and especially this time of year, even though some of the teams are playing in the playoffs and maybe they will get some more spectators in and so on. But this time of year, it's really the hardest part for all of the clubs in Sweden, because they have a lot of invoices coming in, but they don't have revenue coming in from the sponsors, which they receive probably in the beginning of the season. So this time of year, it's always a struggle for basically all the teams. At the same time, they need to start kind of like looking into next season's team. They need to get in the transfer market. They need to attract. They're losing players, but they need to also sign players. And maybe they have had some players whose contracts are coming to an end. They perhaps have done a better season than last year. They obviously want a better contract. So this is challenging times for many clubs currently. So with that said, I think that we see it in the struggle in the league as a total, that we probably won't see really huge signings in the way that you could see previously. And then you could also add that there is a factor also called the elite license, which every team, don't get me started on the elite license because I have so many thoughts about this, but the thing is that there is an elite license. You need to show plus result at the end of every season, and the federation, Swedish Floorball Federation, looks really harshly on that. You can get some you can actually, if you don't make it, there is a grace period for some time, but there are several clubs that are really struggling with the elite licenses as well, and that is all good. I think the elite license is pretty good in a way, because you need to be kind of like you need to have your books in order and so on. But if you would look at this from the company, if you would start as kind of like a startup company or scale-up company, then you would have a grace period, which wouldn't be just one season. It would be like a longer period. So you could kind of like establish yourself and live on borrowed money, so to speak. So, there is a lot to be debated around the elite license, in my opinion. But yeah, the reality is that, it's tough times, and a lot of clubs are struggling with partnerships and sponsorships, and it boils down to basically that the sport doesn't have the market value that we actually have thought it has or had in the past.
Which is a little bit a shame when talking about Swedish Super League, by many experts and people perceived as the best league in the world. I need to cut you in a little bit quicker then, because I get you touched again two other points that I want to quickly discuss. When talking about the club's financials, and correct me if I'm wrong, the the major income of the Swedish clubs is from the sponsors and from the income of from the games. Am I right? Is there something else?
Yeah. No, I would say
Any-
that is the majority of the income comes through those channels. Yes.
And are there any subventions or subsidies from the local what's it called
communities and cities and
communities? Yes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that is also, I mean, that is also one factor. Then obviously the clubs do a lot of other activities as well. They are having camps and tournaments and so on, which is also a major income for some clubs, not all clubs, because they don't have the kind of like the organization. You have to also remember that all of the clubs, they don't have professional clubs. I mean, it's people who are working full-time jobs, and they have this kind of like they do it on their spare time. So there are some clubs that have some some people employed, but that is not the case with the majority of the clubs. So that is also one factor when you want to kind of like produce tournaments, cups, camps, or even if you want to attract people to your games. It demands a lot of work from the people in the clubs, and in some clubs they don't have the manpower, I would say. So that is also one factor.
Yeah. And the second point that I noted down here when you were speaking regarding the elite license, I saw that you're a little bit you raised your eyebrows when talking about it. There is something similar here in Czechia as well for the highest Czech league. In my opinion, I think this is quite necessary on such a level, and if the league needs to, if the league wants to grow, there also needs to be some kind of stability in it, and so that doesn't happen something similar to what happened to Torrengruppen, for example, or I don't know if there has been in history any cases where a club needed to cancel during the season, which even for the sponsors of the league would not like as well. So I mean, there has to be some kind of requirements for the clubs to play in the highest league. Do you agree with me?
Of course. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously you need to have some kind of like some guidelines and guardrails and to be able to play in the league and register for the Swedish Super League. It's just that in my opinion, you would need to look into the license, how it's set up in terms of going season to season, which is quite tough, demands. Maybe you should look like in a little bit of a longer period. Like for instance, when you loan money in the bank, you don't need to pay it back, instantly in one season. So I mean, again, this is a bigger topic, and I'm sure that there are people at the federation and people at the clubs, and then they also, some would agree with me, some wouldn't, probably wouldn't, would disagree with me. So I mean, this is a bigger topic. But in terms of what we are today, I mean, we could look at that from this point as well. We have quite many clubs that have like one huge investor, one huge sponsor, and what happens if that company goes bankruptcy, right? So I mean, that it's at the same time, blink of an eye, the money disappears from the club, and the club is no more. And that is kind of like the reality we're living in currently. So therefore, if you are in a situation as a club, you need longer period to be able to repair the economy than just one season, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get your point here. Maybe we can now switch more focus to the league
Yeah.
itself. When looking at this picture
Mm.
of the Swedish champions in the last many years, there's been just two teams winning the title, Storvreta and Falun. The last champion that was not one of these was AIK in 2009. What does it say about the league that there are obviously two giants and no other team won the league for this long period of time?
Yeah, you could look at it from many different angles, basically. First of all, I mean, you're totally right that we have two dynasties, Falun and Storvreta. Then behind those, it's not been like it's been Storvreta and Falun head to head in all the finals. We have had some teams there during those years. But yeah, in the end, it's either been Falun or Storvreta that has won lifted the trophy. First of all, I would like to say that it's quite an achievement of those clubs. Obviously, that they have been so prominent for so long. I mean, they have, I think in Storvreta, it could be like their third or fourth generation of players this current season. And if you look at Falun, maybe it's like second or third. So, I mean, they've been able to kind of like, nourish the culture and the winning culture, so to speak. So that is truly amazing, hands down. I think those clubs are doing a heck of a job and been doing it for many seasons and many years. So first of all, hats off and hands down. That's it's great achievement. Looking at from the kind of the media side, which if I put that hat on, you can imagine how hard it is to kind of like come up with some new angles when it comes to Falun and Storvreta. I think we covered them all basically. So every time we do a game or a match, between these two teams, is kind of like pulling out the rabbit out of a hat. It's like how do we tackle and what kind of angles do we have this time, since we've been covering them for so long and so forth. So that is obviously a little bit tricky. Then you could look at why doesn't the competition step up? And that is basically question mark for the other clubs, I would say. If I would have if I would be in those other clubs, those would be kind of like the role model when it comes to the winning culture, how to set up a winning culture. Then obviously both Falun and Storvreta have also had and still have financial difficulties as well. So it's not only the finance, I mean, that they have the most money. Maybe they had that at some point that they had it, but currently that is not the case. There are clubs that are doing better financially than these two clubs. But again, it boils down to the kind of like the winning culture that they have been molding down to the from generation, from player to player. That's been a key achievement that they have done. But for the league itself, I think I understand what you're after here. I mean, obviously, I would love, for this, spring now in April the 25th in Avicii Arena, that there would be some other club at least, and also winning the trophy. I don't see that happening because I think Storvreta is still, the team to beat, and they're done a great season so far. But obviously, it's sports and everything can happen. But at the end, I think that the sport in itself would be kind of like freshed up a bit if somebody else would, become the Swedish champion. But then again, you have to race for it, and Storvreta is gonna give you a run for your money if you strip them from the title.
But for the league overall, isn't it a little bit boring, if I'm too blunt?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, I mean, that is the kind of like constant conflict that you get. You know, that these two teams is either Falun or Storvreta winning the trophy, and it would be, like I said, it would be really refreshing if somebody else would come in and kind of like, you know, steal the title at least for one season. Or it's like, in my opinion, that is kind of like, you know, what I want to say to the other teams. If they can, how come that you can't? I mean, you have the same kind of like tools at hand. You have your great arenas.
Do they have the same tools
Yeah.
or means?
Yeah, I do. I not all of them, but then, you know, you look at some of the clubs. Look at Växjö, for instance, and that have been building up kind of like the team for many years, and yeah, well, they have won Swedish Cup title. That's kind of like, you know, what they have, and they've been to one final against Falun, you know, during this period that you showed. But, you know, there are teams that, you know, they have the arenas, they have the organization, they have the, you know, financial power or muscle that is needed. They have the players, but then again, it boils down to that, you know, Storvreta Falun are doing something a little bit better every day compared to the other teams, and that is really something for the other teams, you know, to understand and, you know, learn from. And you know, I don't know, 15-16 years this has been going on. Obviously, there is some homework still to do with the other teams. I would say.
I wanted to show you also these two tables. The attendance, we touched it a little bit, but if you have a look at it, and what can you say about it? Is the crowd numbers, are these good in Sweden, in your opinion?
Well, to be totally honest, I would say no. I would say that, you know, I would, in my opinion, a good kind of like average would be at least 1,000 spectators per game for each club, I would say, which is not the case. So of course, I mean, there are reasons behind it, this and that, and blah blah blah, and yada yada yada. I mean, you can some of these clubs don't have, you know, arenas that are you know, decent enough to take as much spectators, whereas some clubs do have, you know, really nice facilities, really nice arenas, and so forth. Then again, you could look at it from the positive side. We have the new team Visby that came up to the league again, and that they are, you know, on top of the table. It's good for the whole, you know, it's good for the Visby as a club, Gotland as the island. There is a huge support around that. There's a fan culture, and people really support their team. But they're also working really hard. I would say that Visby is the club when it comes to, you know, marketing their games and how they kind of like structure and organize, and how hard they work for their spectators. And they've been doing it for many years. I used to be in that club when they used to play in Division 2, and already then they were super professional when it came to kind of like, you know, attracting people to their games. So Visby is a great example. When you work hard for many seasons, many years, then you get also the results when it comes to the spectators. Then you can also look at the if you go to the bottom, you see AIK, for instance. This is a Stockholm-based team. AIK has a huge fan base in all of the. It's a big club, you know, when it comes to football and hockey and this and that. How come that, you know, AIK can't attract people in our capital into their games, especially, you know, when there's a big fan culture? So this is your kind of like, this is where you can see that, you know, they don't have the organization, they don't have the manpower. I don't know if they have the competence and skill set. I don't want to go that far, but, you know, they fairly, you know, are lacking. There are gaps, you know, in their system, basically. Because when you know, AIK should easily, in my opinion, have at least, you know, average of 1,000 people. Even though the arena is not great, you know, in Stockholm, they don't build any great new facilities. It's this old kind of like, you know, your Eastern Germany kind of like, you know, arena in northern parts of Stockholm. But anyhow, there's so much, you know, fans here. There are so many floorball, supporters, and especially in Oiko as a club, they should be doing better than this. So you have all these kind of like differences, and then there are also some numbers that you could easily kind of like question. For instance, Pixbo is on number 3, but they get their attendance from basically one game. They have one game during the huge youth tournament in beginning of January called the Gothia Cup, where they play in the Scandinavium, the big arena in Gothenburg. And all of the youth players playing that tournament get free access to that, and that is really kind of like I would say like doping in a way your numbers. So I mean, if that game wasn't there for Pixbo, then Pixbo would also be down in the bottom with AIK basically. PSP is a great example of a club that works super strong and super professionally, and so that is a role model for many clubs when it comes to like marketing your games. And then you have the teams that need to kind of like step up. Basically, that's all I'm saying about that. Maybe I could also add one more thing that I'm kind of like which is kind of like a little bit of a passion of mine, is also that in order to be able to attract more people, then you need to work with the games as well. You need to have a show. You have to put on a show, and some of these clubs are good at that. Some of them are super lousy, I would say. So in order for people to come there, I mean, there are some great facilities and arenas, for instance, in a couple of let's take for instance Uppsala, and IFU Arena with Storvreta is playing. They have a restaurant and they have this and that. So if you kind of like work with the performance and the entertainment as well, that is also one factor. And I tend to think that it's not that people don't understand, the organization don't understand that, but it's again, do they have the means? Do they have the organization? Do they have the time and effort to do that?
And now I guess we the main course of the show is the Swedish Super League SSL season 2025-2026. Overall, Storvreta finished in the regular season number 1. Any surprise for you?
Not surprised that Storvreta takes the regular season, the pole position, but then you need to also add to that they broke the record. They took the most points in the history of 26 games, so they have been super strong this season. And I have also said that even though Storvreta has had a lot of good teams in the past, different years and generations, I have to say that this team is the best team ever that Storvreta has in terms of the results. But then again, now they're going to that part of the season where everything counts. Even though they have won the Champions Cup, they have won the Swedish Cup. But now it's kind of like the triple to win the national title. So in the end, if they don't win, I mean the title is basically theirs to lose, I would say. But if they don't win, it would be a huge fiasco for them. So, but this Storvreta side this year has been extraordinary so far.
That's the regular season evaluation, I guess. But let's save Storvreta for the last. Now let's jump into it with Jönköping, number 9 in the regular season. We have a one Czech player there, Martin Čermák, that had played quite a huge role in it. It's his second season in the SSL. So what's your take on him?
Well, I think that his Martin's season has been a little bit weaker than last season, in my opinion. Might have to do with that Jönköping as a team didn't really move the needle at all. And they were in the playoffs 2 years ago, They didn't qualify for the playoffs last year, and this year they had a lot of injuries and really bit of a roller coaster ride. They didn't really get the playing in order, so to speak, the system in order. And I think this has also affected on Martin's performances this year. Yeah, that's basically what I think about. In my opinion, Jönköping has been a little bit of a disappointment, and Martin, together with some other players there, in my opinion, are the guys that should lead the way in this team. They actually signed Emil Nielsen from Falun for this season as well, but that didn't do the trick for them either. So I thought that they would reach the playoffs because I really think that they have a talented team, a young team, but a talented team. But they didn't, finish as consistent as I thought they should have in terms of they were still, in the races in the last round. But in the end, they didn't qualify for the playoffs, and I think that this kind of affects on both Martin's season with Jönköping being so up and down this season.
But would you say, well, it's already second season, but would you say that he picked a good team to play in, or maybe vice versa? They chose him to play for them. But in the development point of view, of course, SSL and the elite level, we play, or the teams play to win. But in the perspective of him developing as a player, is it a good team, or would you find another in the league?
I think that, obviously, I'm not an expert on kind of Martin's, past. I've seen him here for 2 seasons now. I think that he chose really wisely. He chose a team that is kind of up and coming, where he would have a good role. He would play a lot in terms of playing minutes and also different variations of the game. So I think that and also the chemistry on the team and the town in itself and so forth. So I think that there was a really wise, smart choice by him to come to Jönköping, since I believe that he was still kind of he's still under development. He's only 23 years old or something like that. So he has his best years to come in his career. So I think that this is a good experience for him to play on a team like Jönköping. But I do believe also that he has higher bars he wants to achieve. And as a club, Jönköping is not there. They're not there yet. They could be top 8, but for the last 2 seasons they haven't been that. But they are kind of slowly progressing. Even though it's like I said, they are. I like this team because when they play at their best, it's really fun. They have a fun, offensive, creative way of playing. It's just that they need to grow up a bit. They need to become more mature, maybe more cynical at times, which they haven't been able to do for during this season. So this is really kind of those fine tunings to come, and hopefully they can kind of keep their players, including Martin, for next year, and they can develop from there. So, but I think that Martin made an excellent choice because he wasn't kind of your household name from Czechia coming to Sweden. So he chose a team that fit him perfectly, I would say.
I think it's already published that he extended his contract with Jönköping for the next season.
Yeah, good.
So we'll see.
Happy to hear
we'll
that.
see what the next season brings as well, as they are already over at the end of March. But from the development point of view, we can move on to Pixbo, where also we have 2 young guns there. Pixbo they are quite regular in the Super League. They won it a couple of times, and also been in the final 2 seasons ago, if I recall correctly. I see Pixbo as a team that gives like chances to players to develop when they are quite young, because Václav is 18 years old.
Yeah.
So can Pixbo be a title contender at the same time as developing the players?
Well, it has shown in the past. I mean, first of all, you're totally correct with Pixbo, and that they have a proud history. I mean, they are one of the teams. I would say one of the only teams that have been in the highest league for all time, basically. So I mean, there is a good platform. There is a good educational platform in that team and in that club, I would say. So, and you're totally correct also that Pixbo is under a rebuild because they lost, Oscar Weissbach, one of the prominent players, went to one of the superstars and one of their own products as well that, went to Switzerland. They lost also Felix Landwehr and Gustav Fritzell, who were kind of like also really kind of like the cornerstones of that team that went to the finals 2 years ago. They beat Falun in the semis and they lost against Storvreta in the final. So obviously, I mean, the character and the system, they need to kind of like build that again as well. They are still a young team. They have a lot of like own products and these young guys, as you were mentioning, on the team, and they're really good at like kind of cherry picking these young guys to that team to develop under kind of like the Pixbo Academy, so to speak, and then they take the necessary steps further in hierarchy. But this year they had to change the system, so they're not playing as offensively, because they were really charming, the floorball community a couple of seasons ago. This year they need to kind of like pull back. They need to play lower defensively and so on. So it's been a totally different kind of like playing style for the guys as well. But in my opinion, that is also good. You need to understand and know that kind of like system to play more defensively, because if you want to reach the playoffs, then they need to take those necessary steps, right? But next season looks, I mean, there are rumors that Daniel Karlentun is coming back from Falun, which is, not official by any means, but there are, really like, the rumors are getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and really reuniting with his Karlentun brothers. Then all the three guys will be on the same team again. And I guess that would be great for the family, right? Because I think the family lives in Gothenburg. So in that sense, when you get back kind of like these players, and imagine if they could also attract back Oscar Weissbach, for instance, from Switzerland, then all of a sudden they jump up in the hierarchy and they would be a title contender again. So, and given that you have Faxa and you have Babik and these guys, that they have a couple of seasons under their belt, they will surely have a really exciting team in the seasons to come.
Václav Babik, quite a youngster. Did you have a chance to commentate him or follow his path? What do you think of him?
Huge talent, young, still teenager, 18 years old, and I really liked him. Also, the kind of like the maturity that he shows in leaving Czechia, coming here to a new town, a new team, and so forth. So that shows that he wants something with his. He wants to develop. He wants to grow as both as a player and as a human being, basically. So. I think he has a really exciting future ahead of him. For this season, he has been part, obviously, the youth program, the youth teams in Pixbo are quite strong, and he's been really strong in his performances on the youth team. And then you have also, he has played a couple of games. He did a couple of shifts in the playoffs against Falun as well. So he hasn't been able to establish himself fully on that team as of yet, but his time will come. He just needs to put in the work, harden up, and be in that environment, and he will develop even stronger till next year.
One point worth saying about Václav Babík is that he got offered a contract in SSL for the first time earlier, even before he joined the under-19 national team in Czechia. So that's worth noting. A little bit surprising to me, but let's move on to Jakub Faksa, the other Czech guy in the Pixbo team. He came in to the SSL from Liberec in Czechia, which was not this is not a title contender team, from a lower placed team. But anyway, he chose to play in Pixbo, his first season. So what do you think of him?
I think he's done a really good season. I mean, he has produced, I mean, like I said, a more defensive team as Pixbo has this season. Is not your, rock and roll team, pushing everything forward and so forth. So, I mean, to produce, I think he has 20 plus points, 21 points or something like that. And he's a strong player. He's strong on the ball. He's strong physically. And he has kind of like, he has been, it's been more, I mean, he's kind of like, gone to the system and suited the SSL, kind of style of play faster than Babík. But Babík is more kind of like, he's still, under development physically as well. But, I think that, Jakub is a more stronger dude, isn't he? So he has a more kilos. So he has, therefore he has been part of, I think it's been a regular on two formations, two lines, basically the whole season. So he has produced better than I thought, and he has also acclimatized into the SSL and Pixbo faster than Babík. But they're totally different, in my opinion, different, characters, two different types of players. So whereas Faksa is more your kind of like target, your physical presence, and Babík is more of a technical guy that plays with skill and speed, basically.
And looking at the results, do you think that they have at this point it's Friday? Do they have more than one game ahead of them, or will their season end quite soon?
Well, everything kind of like points at Falun is gonna run through this either 4-1 or 4-2 in games. Falun is a little bit of a stronger team, I would say. Also, you have to keep in mind that during the regular season, Falun had fairly easy in both games. I think as Pixbo didn't even score on two occasions against Falun. So, but with that said, I think that Pixbo has done a heck of a job so far in the playoffs. They won the first game on penalties. Jon Hedlund, the goalkeeper, was, perhaps, the man of the, well, he was the man of the match. But then they have lost now 2 games in a row, and they were playing this evening down in Gothenburg, where Pixbo is playing at home. So, I mean, this is going to be the crucial game for them, right? If they can win today, they can bounce back, and the kind of like momentum could change basically. But Falun, especially with the first line that Falun has, they are a bit stronger, even though Falun is also under a rebuild. You must remember that. So. But yeah, in the end, I think that, what is to be expected of Pixbo this season is that, go to the quarterfinals, give a team like Falun, battle against them, give them some hurdles. That is good enough, for a team like that. Even though I understand that, Pixbo players, they would disagree with me because they wanna go continue the season. But that is kind of like what you could expect. I think that Pixbo has done it really good this season, and with some additions coming in for next season, they can bounce back a couple of. Maybe they could be a semi-finalist for next year.
Let's shift the focus now to Linköping. Also already playing in the quarterfinals, third in the regular season. Before we talk about the Czech players there, what's your take on the team so far, and also their history with the quarterfinal games and their series previously?
Yeah. So Linköping, little Czechia, you could call them.
Little Czechia.
Little Czechia, yeah. Yeah, Linköping, in my opinion, used to be this kind of like, strong, physical, quite heavy team. Have changed, the chemistry of the team for last couple of, I would say, 3 years. More speedy now, more. They have a more offensive, attacking style of play. They take more risks in their play. So I think that Linköping has, they have done their kind of like homework. They have looked at how to modernize their team, and what kind of characters and what kind of players do we need to bring on board. With that said, I think that Linköping's this season has been really solid, really stable. They finished third in the league, and I've called them the dark horse of the playoffs. Even though they do have their hands full now against Mullsjö, it's gonna probably be a long battle. I mean, it's 2-2 after last night's game, and they actually went behind 0-2, and they have equalized yesterday to 2-2. But this is an exciting team, and I think that Linköping as a club has an exciting future as well. They geographically, they are in a good part of Sweden, where they have a lot of interesting like surroundings with players to choose from. Linköping as a club is they're fairly solid. Financially, they're doing okay, and also that region has a lot of universities and schools and also quite a good job market. So I think that this suits for a club Linköping perfectly, and also they're building a new arena, which will take a couple of years to finish. But when they have that in place as well, then I would say that Linköping is one of the teams that could actually be the team that takes over when the kind of like the dynasty that we have been talking about with Falun and Storvreta ends. Linköping, I think they have found something here that they can actually, if they couple of more additions coming in for the coming seasons, I mean they're going to be right there in my opinion.
That sounds quite promising. What you're saying, even with the arena. So we'll see what the next year is bring. But we need to look into the Little Czechia, as you call them. Let's start with Matej Jędryszak. Is he a legend in Linköping?
Yes, he is. He's an icon. He's a club icon in Linköping. I would say that he's also one of the ambassadors of SSL, I would say, the Swedish Super League. There's a huge respect when Jędryszak is playing. I mean, everybody knows that he's been here for many seasons and many years, and he's a. I'm sure you're gonna show the clip from when he almost got now relegated. But he's also a gentleman when it comes to. He's a great ambassador for the sport, for the town of Linköping, for the club, but also for the Swedish Super League. And when I look at Jędryszak also, I think that during this season he has kind of like found a new spring, so to speak, in his he has always been like super strong when it comes to defense, and he's kind of like reads the play really well, and is always like perfectly located on the pitch. But now he has also produced, again, more than he has done for a couple of seasons. So I think that he has kind of like, he has filled his lungs with energy, and he seems to be younger than he has been in a couple of in the past seasons.
Well, 36 years of age, 12th season that he's playing now. Could there be anyone else in their squad wearing the captain band, or is it just him at this point? Or do you see someone else there potentially?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, he's like I said, he's a club icon. He's almost like a franchise player. They used to have Martin Karlsson before. When Martin Karlsson retired last year, then Matej is kind of like their franchise player now. He's been there for a long time, and so on. But yes, they do have. I mean, Oskar Hovlund, the defender, for sure will become the next captain the day Jędryszak decides to retire.
We'll see how many seasons he adds to already.
Still a lot of juice in those legs, so hopefully he will, run a couple of more seasons more.
And in the Little Czechia, another already experienced player, Josef Rypar, playing his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 season in Linköping. A stable part of the Czech national team, maybe a different role in Linköping and in the national team. Currently injured in the playoffs, unfortunately. But what do you think of him, Mika?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think Rypar has. I mean, this is an interesting profile when it comes to. I mean, he can be super skillful at times. He can do stuff with the ball that is kind of like unheard of. And then he can also make some really sloppy plays at times, just hand the ball away and lose duels in a way that you rarely see by a national team player. So when Josef is playing his best, I mean, he's a great player in the SSL, but he goes kind of like, it's kind of like a roller coaster, depending on almost like, where his mind is at different stages of the game. He's quite, he has a temperament, which I like. He sometimes, he goes over, the tipping point. But yeah, I mean, for sure, he's needed in Linköping. He has tons of experience, both from the national team, from big tournaments, but also from the playoffs in Linköping. So he's missed right now. But then again, if there would be, and this is kind of like harsh for me to say, sorry for all the Josef Rypar fans, if there's one player that Linköping can do without currently on the injured list, is actually Josef, because they have so many good defenders. So when they play with when they kind of like coach themselves to four defenders playing with 2 lines, for instance, they have really good setup with defenders. So I would say that he's still missed, but Linköping as a team are not as dependent on Josef as of previous years.
The 2 newcomers in Linköping and in the SSL, Lukáš Punčochář. I like the pronunciation of yours, of his last name. That maybe I can hear it again this season. Came from the Czech champion Mladá Boleslav, also part of the Czech national team so far. Is he a good rookie in SSL?
Yes, he is. In my opinion, Lukáš is one of the most exciting players coming in to the league this year. Not a player that your average Swedish floorball fan knows, even though I got the opportunity to see this guy already, many years ago on the national team. I already then, even though he's still young, but then he was like super young. He was making his mark on the pitch when he was playing, the national team. He had. I mean, you need to look at how Linköping is kind of like modeled their team. They're playing with three most of the time with three lines, three formations, and they have kind of like spread, the quality players into all of these lines. But now, when you have seen in the playoffs, when they put together Lukas with, for example, Oskar Hovlund, magic happens. And in my opinion, he has done his two best games in Linköping shirt this season in the last two games. I think that this guy, he's still obviously, he has a lot to learn and yada yada yada, but he's already a really good player. He reads the play well, both offensively, defensively. He's a speedy guy. He goes into the duels. He wins a lot of one-on-ones. He's a smart player. He's an intelligent player, I would say. And it's been, every time I'm commentating Linköping, I try to kind of like show some clips with him, what he's doing actually, that, other youngsters playing, defensive position, move without the ball, taking these necessary runs, not perhaps for your sake, but your teammate's sake and so forth. So in my opinion, great addition, smart recruitment by Linköping to take this guy. He has a bright future ahead of him, and we haven't seen nearly the best of him yet.
And the last to the party in Linköping, in the goal, also a nice pronunciation in the commentary, but that's all fine. Tomáš Jurco, also coming from, not the latest Czech champion. However, he had won the Czech league with Tatran, and not just the league, as well as the Czech Cup and the Champions Cup against Falun. But coming to the best league in the world as a foreigner, the goalkeeper, 26 regular season games and 26 appearances. And he did not let anyone between the sticks. So, Mika, Tomáš Jurco.
Yeah, good regular season, really good. I think that, again, this is a good recruitment by Linköping. In the past, I have been criticizing, the goaltending in Linköping. Not that they haven't had, good goalkeepers, here and there, but they, didn't have the kind of like the consistency of a good goaltending every night, evening in, evening out, and so forth. That is what they got with Tomáš this year. I think that he, if you look at the statistics, for instance, he only had Jon Hedlund, Måns Parsjö, and also Viktor Åkerstedt from Strängnäs before him, of the goaltenders that are actually, playing majority of the games. So he did a good regular season. He was really stable, and he really provided for Linköping so that they could become third, and they had that consistency, throughout the year. Usually Linköping goes a little bit like this during the season. They were quite stable this I really tend to say is thanks to his goaltending. Looking at the playoffs now, this is kind of like the next step for him. Started out a little bit slow, I would say, but so did the whole Linköping team as well. But now in the last couple of games now, he has really stepped up. And yesterday he was, if you look at the head-to-head between Mullsjö's goaltender Jansson and Tomáš in Linköping, he won that clearly. So if we can, raise the bar a little bit, as you must do as a goaltender and a player in the playoffs, then he can really be that kind of like provider for Linköping, and also go to the semifinals, and maybe even there, be able to put some hurdles Like I said, they could be the dark horse of the playoffs. There's still work to do. They need to have the stars must be aligned and this and that. And obviously, how do you say it? Jurcho. Jurcho. Yeah. So he's it's a good recruitment for Linköping. It has provided that stability. That's what I'm saying.
With Tomáš, do you recall any other examples of even Swedish goalies that did not have anyone else in between the sticks during the season and even in the playoffs?
Well, Måns Barsjö in Storvreta, as well as Jon Hedlund in Pixbo, those guys tend to not to want, to
let anyone in.
Exactly. Of course, I mean, in these cases, then usually it's a coaching decision. Maybe Storvreta is playing a team that a lower level team, so to speak, and then they can kind of like give a Barsjö rest. And with Jon Hedlund, there has been also he was injured a little bit and so forth. But all of these kind of, and Kalle Benning in Falun is the same. He doesn't he wants to be in goal every single game. So I think this is kind of like the mentality of the goalkeepers that are up there. When they want to be those kind of like stars for their team, and they're aspiring on national team and so forth, and then they need to kind of like have that number one mentality in their head.
Linköping currently 2-2 in the season against Molde. We will see what's going to happen next. Us Czechs, we would like to see Linköping in the semifinals, of course. Let's see. But
it's going to be a close battle. It could easily become Game 7 in this series. So it's going to be a close battle.
Let's surprise ourselves. But last but not least, creme de la creme, Storvreta. This season's Champions Cup winner, Swedish Cup winner, they won the regular season. You mentioned it already in the beginning of the episode. They are the giant, and to use your words, they have the league to lose. We have two players there. Filip Langer, one of the Czech again, superstars, stable national team player. What do you see in him? How was his regular season, and what's his role in Storvreta, Ika?
Yeah, well, I mean, Filip Langer has been for many years one of the players that he has he's a household name from Czechia. When people in Sweden, when they think about the Czech national team and Czech players overall, I mean, Filip Langer's name pop up to mind basically immediately. I would say that in my opinion, Filip he came across several years ago like this super talent. I don't know how he was really young, when he came to Sweden, played for Kalmarsund a couple of seasons, and but he's a different player today, and he has a different role in Storvreta. And what I think is quite exciting with this guy, and shows like the intelligence and the smartness, and also the maturity that this guy has, that he understands what his role is. He's not he's not gonna be the goal scorer in that sense anymore. He's more taking more responsibility in other aspects of the game. He plays more defensively. You can put him in any surrounding, basically any position. He plays center, he plays forward, he probably could play even defender, and he plays the role that the coach wants him to play, basically. And he's a great kind of like supporting actor for the young guns that they have, Gabriel Kohonen and Zacharias Ulriksson. He's almost kind of like a father figure to those guys already, taking huge responsibility, so that these guys can bloom and explode in the offensive zone. And this for me is like, equivalent of a great player. When you can accept your role like that, then you're a great player. So I mean, obviously he makes his points and goals and assists here and there, but it's more his overall effort, the professionalism that he brings to the table in Storvreta every single practice, every single game. He seldom has a bad game. He always, and the level he plays on is really high. But then again, would if you were said to me like 5-6 years ago that Philipp Langer would not win the league when it comes to points, I would have said, no way, he's gonna win it. I mean, this guy has 60 goals in him. He's gonna do. I mean, he can put on a show everywhere. That hasn't happened, but that is because he has a totally different role in Storvreta nowadays that he used to have in for instance, Kalmarsund.
So if we, let's say, compare it to the movie industry, and if there would be Academy Awards, which we have some awards in floorball, but in the movie you have the lead actor and the supporting actor. So would you agree that he could win the award for the floorball best floorball supporting player in the season?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, and really to tap into that. I mean, he really caters for other, the superstars on Storvreta, your Filip Erikssons and these guys. So I mean, and it takes, you need to be really you have to have a strong mentality in terms. I know what he means for Czech floorball, and I know how kind of big star he is on the national team of Czechia. But to take on that kind of supporting role in Storvreta, it takes character to do that. And I'm super impressed by Philip's, how the way he handles it. He plays where the coach wants him to play, and he plays, to the level that the coach wants him to play.
And does he, now going into the international floorball, in your opinion, does he have the same role in the Czech national team as he has now in Storvreta?
No, in my opinion, no. Maybe people would disagree, but I would say that he has more freedom. It's more like he's a player that you build upon offensively, and he's a creative, and he has those skills. It's not that he's a great player when it comes to also when it comes to creativity and so forth. But in Storvreta, there are other guys, that have that kind of freedom, so he needs to kind of have a, like we said, a supporting role. But then again, I don't know how many goals he has won now with Storvreta. Is it 3 in a row now? So I mean, obviously, in the end of the day, when you look back at your career, you want those titles, right? That's what you are playing for, and he has totally understood, what kind of culture and how the hierarchy looks like in Storvreta, and has really, acclimatized himself really well into that environment.
Last but not least, his Czech teammate from Tatran, teammate from the Czech national team, teammate in Storvreta, Ondřej Němeček, the captain of the Czech national team. If I recall correctly, he won the last year Defender of the Season award, Orec Pak. So far, I'd start with the question: how important he is for Storvreta?
Hugely important, I would say. I think that most of the foundation of Storvreta's type of play, when it comes to both offensively and defensively, is dependent on Němeček. he's I mean, he seldom, gives away the ball. He plays. I think he's like, if there would be like statistics for pass accuracy out there, he would have like your high 90s, 95% or something like that. He's super smart when it comes to like who to mark, how to adjust the defensive system. He's in total control. He's I think he's like majestic in his way to play, and he's the quarterback of Storvreta, I would say, the general out there. And if Storvreta wouldn't have him, I don't know if they would have been as prominent as they have been. So in my opinion, Nemecek is one of the greatest players in the world. He's definitely one of the greatest players in SSL. Doesn't perhaps get all the headlines all the time, but when you also listen to the players in Storvreta, you listen to Gabriel Kohonen and Zacharias Ulriksson and these guys. They are so fortunate, and they just praise this guy that they are playing, that they have the kind of like the opportunity, the privilege to play with Nemecek behind them, because I mean he's the brain behind quite many of those goals that these guys produce forward. Yeah, well, I could also say that when it comes to who's the best defender in SSL in the regular season, it's really like there are two guys out there. It's either Ondrej Nemecek or Oskar Hovlund in Linköping, and I would say even like this, those guys are the best defenders in the world currently. If you would look at them, and what it boils down to, who's gonna get that individual prize is basically, I think, who's gonna go further in the playoffs. So one thing that would be really kind of like cool if that would happen is that if they would meet head to head, Oskar Hovlund and Nemecek. They're a little bit of a different characters in when it comes to playing style. Hovlund plays more like the way the Swedish national team wants to play, with the kind of like the running backs, and Nemecek is more kind of like your passing game, and the more kind of like standing still kind of player when it comes to the on that position. But nevertheless, in my all-star team that I chose on my own, I had Ondrej Nemecek and Oskar Hovlund as a pair on that team.
It's quite difficult to get headlines in Storvreta if your last name is not Kohonen or Ulriksson, right?
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean, and now, I mean, obviously, I mean, Storvreta is they have different variations. I mean, they can pair and mix, their team, kind of the first two lines. I mean, the 10 guys that are playing, they're so good, so they can you can mix them up however you want, basically. But when they put like Nemecek behind Kohonen, Ulriksson, and when they have Nydenfelt, or if they have Langer in as a center forward, oh my, that's so hard to play against. Both offensively but also defensively, and the system that they're playing defensively, with the man-to-man tactics that they're playing. It's I mean, that's the reason basically why they, I mean, not the system in itself, it's how the players adapt to that system. And I mean, it's like so suited for these players, and super difficult. I mean, it's shown time and time again, it's super difficult to play against, and no other teams has had the keys kind of like to lock Storvreta up.
Last thing that I wanted regarding Ondrej Nemecek. You mentioned rumors regarding the Kalentun brothers in Pixbo, but there's been also some rumors Nemecek will not continuing in Storvreta. You also mentioned what that would mean for Storvreta, but can you imagine him playing in a different SSL team, or even coming back to Czechia?
First of all, if he chooses not to stay in Storvreta, that would be a huge loss for Storvreta. Then again, Storvreta has shown time and time again that they are not dependent on any players, basically. But I would say that to be able to find another player as suited to Storvreta system and as great influence that he is for Storvreta's style of playing, that is going to be super hard for Storvreta to find. So it will be a huge loss for Storvreta.
And don't you have? Sorry to cut you off. Don't you have any inside info of what can happen with him after the season?
No. Regarding him, I haven't heard. I mean, I get all these kinds of rumors and so forth nearly daily coming in, but I haven't heard any. But then again, I mean, I can speculate and I can understand. I mean, perhaps he wants to return to Czech Republic. I would, however, think that it would be good for him and the national team if it would be in Storvreta for one more season, especially when we have the World Championship coming in December. I think that would be good, beneficial for both Nemešek and the national team. But I don't see him going into another club. He's already at the club, What could he do after that? I mean, of course, he can go to Falun, but Falun, they play a totally different game. It's like a totally different system. And Nemešek, like I said, he's like super suited he's like the role model of Storvreta's way of playing. Then, of course, he could go to other clubs, but I don't understand. I don't see really the point why. I mean, he's already at, the club of clubs, so to speak. So that, of course, Switzerland, that could be an option, to get some bucks if he wants to do that. So that could be obviously one way to go. Or, like I said, returning home soil, back home, be the legend in the Czech league.
So before we finish, who do you think that is going to become the Swedish champion this season?
Storvreta. I don't see anyone, winning that. I mean, it's a one game, but Storvreta has shown time and time again in those types of games as well that they're. I mean, the biggest opponent to Storvreta is Storvreta themselves.
We'll see. Mika, again, thank you very much that you joined. Thank you for your expert commentary and your opinions. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you so much, Andre.
So this was our special. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye.